is what we're doing today then. What we're doing today, we're going to talk about disrupting self-fertilization in plants. Yeah. Right, but before we begin, just want to clarify some points. David, you started already. Thank you. Okay, so on the board right now I have a plant with two flowers. Yeah, each flower has both male and female parts. Right? So, assuming some pollen grains from this particular flower lands onto this particular stigma, right? Then the pollen tube goes down and then it fertilizes this plant over here. Is this self or cross-fertilization? Okay, so what's the difference between self and cross-fertilization? The idea between self and cross means that we look at cross is between two different plants. Self is within your own plant. Okay, so this is where I need to clarify something. What if the pollen grain from here lands on here? Is it self or cross-fertilization? Okay, so the idea between self and cross is about individual plants. Okay, if it's within the same plant but different flowers on the same plant, it's still considered self. Okay, it's only when you have different plants all together but same species, and then you have pollen grains being transferred from one to the other, like over here, like that, and then that's cross-pollination and then fertilization takes place. Okay, so just want to establish that. Don't be confused when you see these two terms being used. Okay, so that's just the first point. Different species are very likely the pollen grains, the tube may not grow at all. Why do I bring this up? Because at the end of the day, plants can do both. But very often, plants want to promote cross-fertilization. Okay? Why so? It's a little bit like, if you think about it, if you look at humans, if there's inbreeding, right? After many generations, the offspring that come out will be genetically very similar and very susceptible to any new disease that comes their way. It is as good as, if there's inbreeding between a family line, it's as good as they are shuffling their own cards and just passing the cards between. Right? If every card is an allele, right? We learn what alleles are, different forms of the same gene. But if there's shuffling between different individuals from different family lines, you can expect that your deck of cards become more diverse, high chance that you can survive the harsh environments around you. So plants do the same. They try their best to promote cross-fertilization and try their best to prevent self-fertilization. And that is where our scope for today. We want to find out the many ways that plants prevent themselves from getting self-fertilized. Do plants still self-fertilize themselves? They do, right? For example, sometimes when conditions are very harsh and it's not possible to carry out cross-fertilization, it may still use self-fertilization as a way to reproduce. Okay? Yeah, another question. If we look at these two arrows over here, okay, so A and B and C, which one of these is asexual reproduction? Which one of these is sexual reproduction? Okay, I'd like you to think. Assuming that the pollen grain grows down and then double fertilization takes place. Yeah? So the question is, which one is sexual, which one is asexual? What's the definition of asexual or sexual? Asexual only involves one parent. Is that always true? Then what's the definition of sexual? Sexual requires fertilization. So this is a trick question. Any one of them asexual in nature? None of them. Okay. Oh, can you have asexual in plants? Can. Okay, so how can plants carry out asexual regrowth? This is not asexual regrowth. If there is double fertilization taking place at each one of them, that's not asexual, that's sexual. Right? When there's fertilization, it's sexual. So it's a trick question. Okay? So then the question is, how do plants carry out asexual reproduction? You may have learned this in primary school before. Maybe you've tried it yourself. Have you ever, maybe if there's a part of the plant growing, right, one leaf maybe, then you go and cut off this leaf, then you go and put it in the ground, then the leaf starts sprouting some roots. That's asexual. It's just plucking part of the individual and you're regrowing the part. You've done it before? You know what money plants are? Sometimes people just stick, and they'll just propagate. Right? That's asexual in nature. Right? That's an example. You know potatoes? Right? How potatoes, you can just create more and more potatoes. Potatoes sometimes come with eyes, right? You leave it for too long, then eyeballs start coming out. If you go and plug those eyes, and then you go and put it inside the ground, it shall grow into a potato. That's asexual also. Right? Same individual, just cutting out parts and then putting it elsewhere. Have you tried regrowing garlic before? Each clove, you just pluck out the clove, and put inside, each one will grow out into new garlic. They are genetically identical in nature. That's asexual. Yeah? So that's how you can carry out asexual. But once there's a pollen grain, eggs involved, that is sexual. Okay? So that is a trick question. So today, the focus of today is we want to find out how plants prevent self-fertilization so that they can promote this instead, so that their offspring can be quite diverse in nature. Okay? To do so, this is our task for today. We have 3 different plants: papaya, hollyhock, and primrose plant. Each plant, I found an image of their flowers. I'd like everyone now to read up on this page over here, pages 8, 9, 8 and 9. Pages 8 and 9. After reading page 8 and 9, I'd like you in your pairs or your triplets to figure out the mystery. How do you think these 3 plants are preventing self-fertilization based on what you've read? You may do a little research by yourself also to find out how they prevent self-fertilization. After which we will have a quick discussion. And that's really the skill to pick up here today. Your quiz or exam, we may provide you a flower and we ask you, how do you think it prevents self-fertilization? Okay? So, some quick reading time. After you're done reading, please, you can start discussing with your friends. you are done, you may view your friends' responses. Let's have a look at the first plant, the papaya plant. Earlier on, I just had a convo with Debbie, brought up something very interesting. She observed that ferns don't quite have flowers. So, do they carry out sexual or asexual? Okay, you just look outside right now, look at that fern, underneath got a lot of brown thing, right? Those are spores. So when you rub underneath the fern, right, you can get a lot of spores. And if you look at the evolution of plants, ferns are quite primitive plants. So if you go back to Jurassic times, you may not see flowering plants, you may see instead a lot of ferns. They reproduce in a more primitive way using spores. But you can see one limitation of spores is that it's not that good to be carried by wind. It's more effective to be carried by water. And as such, there are some limitations when we look at how they are dispersed. Okay, so first plant, we have the papaya plant. We have a papaya plant in school. If you just go to the IS lab, below IS lab, there are 2 papaya plants there. You can go and look, they are flowering right now. Here, we show you 2 flowers. They are from the same species of papaya plant, yet we get 2 different kinds of flowers. Offhand, can you tell which one is a male flower, which is a female flower? This is an essential skill to pick up. Why would you say the right side is the male? What's your evidence? Okay, the parts inside doesn't seem to reach out. Possible? Yeah? Oh, right, okay, then you use this evidence. They put a male and a female here. Okay? If we provide a colored image, pollen grain tends to be of a certain color. Right? They tend to be a deep yellowish color. And therefore the anthers tend to look that color also. So, the right hand side is the male flower, left hand side is the female flower. This over here is the stigma, quite large, to be able to stick as many pollen grains as possible. So what method of prevention of self-fertilization is taking place over here? Let's have a look. Here says that they have different reproductive parts of different flowers, so it's a form of morphology. Utah says each flower only contains male or female reproductive parts. Okay, that is possible. That is true. And also on different plants. Okay, the male and female flowers are on different plants. It is dioecious. So it's a good point at this point, perhaps let's talk about what dioecious is. A plant that's dioecious is as such. I have 2 plants. One of them may only contain the female parts. The other one may contain only flowers that contain the male parts. That's what dioecious means. Okay? Dioecious means each plant has their own gender. So as a human race, we are dioecious. Yeah? A monoecious is when a plant has both genders on the same plant. So that means to say, I could have two flowers, one male, one female, on the same plant. It's not dioecious. They still have both genders on the same plant. If you find a plant with flowers that contain both male and female parts, it's definitely not dioecious either. Both genders on the same plant. Okay? So, and that's what it means. Okay, so when you see the word dioecious, so how do we describe plants that have both male and female parts on the same plant? Okay, very good. I'm not sure if it's in your textbook. Okay, it's not, but you can infer it's monoecious. Mono, let's call it dioecious. Dioecious, so monoecious. Okay. Another way to put it, Longshen says that papaya plant has unisexual plants. That means each plant of the same species will either be male or female. Right? So, how do you identify plants that are dioecious? You often want to see if the flowers on different plants contain different sexes. That's one way we can prevent self-fertilization. The next plant, the hollyhock plant. Again, almost seemingly two different flowers, but this case a little bit different. It says that actually these two flowers are just at different stages of development on the same plant. The flower on the right will eventually develop into the flower on the left. That means whatever you see here, give it enough time, it will transform into what's on the left hand side. Offhand again, can you tell which flower in each stage of development has male or female parts only? Yeah. Can you tell which one is the male one, which one is the female? Right side. Can you see that again it's quite yellowish? Then you also can see a little bit of pollen dropping off here and there. Left hand side, again with the stigma, quite luscious. But the difference here is that actually this flower, give it enough time, can develop into this flower. So what is happening here? In this case, let's look at Rayon's response. Rayon says different parts of the flower mature at different times. In this case, which one matures first? The male. In your textbook, they describe this as either proto-entry or proto-gyne. Right? If a male parts develop first, there's proto-entry. If the female parts develop first, there's proto-gyne. Jing Kai says it's temporal. The flowers are developing at different times. Right? So this is one way you can also describe. Very often we also hope that you can describe, follow up with whether it's the male or the female part that develops first. Kayla says maturation of female and male parts of the flower occur at different times. And you can see how if it develops at different times, then the chances of you self-fertilizing yourself is much lower. Okay? So second method that plants can employ. Last method, primose plant. Here we have again two different flowers you can observe. They both have male and female parts, and it's also a way of preventing self-fertilization. How? If we just have a look here, can you identify the anthers and the stigma? Okay, I think I already put here. So the anthers are the yellowish parts, stigma, the parts with like a round, furry part on top. What method are we employing here? Xinhui says it's temporal. Oh, okay. Xinhui changed your mind. So Xinhui, what do you think it is now? Okay, spatial. You see both the male and female parts present, but just at different parts of the flower. And in fact, quite far away from each other. This is one way to prevent self-fertilization. Although of course, if you look at this, there's still a chance you can self-fertilize, right? Just jiggle. If the anthers over here, jiggle enough, or it may just form the stigma over here. Still possible, but at least we reduce the chances of it. If you look at a lot of flowers outside, if you were to go to our school garden, go and have a look at and peer into the flower. You'll find that actually very few flowers, you'll find the anthers and stigma very close to each other, separated very often. What else? Oh, haven't refreshed yet. Don't train us read yours out loud. Oh, what? Okay. One day, what else read? The genetic system regulates flower structure in these flowers. Maintains a 50 to 50 ratio between pins and drums. What's the difference between pins and drums?
I don't know what it is.
They just copy paste. Okay, the flowers are purple, blah blah blah. The stamens and stars are of 3 different lengths to limit self-fertilization. Okay, interesting. I didn't even know that there are 3 different lengths you can have. At the end of the day, this is a play of genes. How you express your genes. If you express more gene that can make a certain part longer, then it has to be longer at those locations. What if all else fails? What if accidentally some pollen grains still manage to land on the stigma? How? Okay, so plants have one last method that they can use to prevent self-fertilization. You will see this inside your textbook. They call this self-incompatibility. This is its last attempt at preventing self-fertilization. How? Well, it prevents the pollen tube from even growing down. So if a pollen grain lands on its own flower, on its own plant, plants may employ this last method. Prevent the pollen grain from even growing, and fertilization cannot even occur. Okay, that is the last method, using its own chemicals to prevent this self-fertilization. This is to prevent self-fertilization. In primary school, you have learned that there are many ways to prevent not self-fertilization, but prevent the plants from disruption of seed dispersal. No longer this prevention of self-fertilization, but one other way, if we move forward in time, let's say the fruit already develops up, and we don't want the seeds to develop in its own proximity. One other way is to promote different ways of seed dispersal, and I think you learn this in primary school, right? When I come back later on, okay, or maybe now at some time, in this box over here, I brought my other collection of things. So I like to collect insects, but prior to that, I collect a lot of seeds. So this is my seed collection. This is almost every possible seed I can find in Singapore. Okay? Yeah. So I'm very proud of this collection. I have seeds that can be dispersed by explosion, can be dispersed by wind, dispersed by water. Many different seeds that we can have a look. In this remaining time, I would like to give out some seeds for you all to explore and have a look. Really, when we look at seed dispersal, it's no longer about preventing self-fertilization. Fertilization has already happened. But you know what we can prevent if the seed lands further away from the mother tree? Well, it can help ensure that this particular plant that grows up will have a higher chance of meeting someone else. Yeah? So, some seeds I have. Did I mention this particular fruit to you last week? Yeah? It is the Dutchman's pipe. That particular fruit that will open up like a lantern, and then the seeds inside will fly out. So this is the Dutchman's pipe. You can find it around in school also. This particular fruit is very special. It is the cotton plant fruit. You can see that the fruit over here is not quite edible, but it's quite useful for other purposes, right? Where is the seed in this case? You have to furrow through all the cotton, and then you find the seed in the middle. But try not to do that. I like this particular arrangement. To do what? Oh, to absorb your blood. Okay, first thing you can find this out, then perhaps. Actually, I thought it's very cute. You can like put makeup. Yeah, it's really very nice to touch. You gotta handle it. Okay. So that's cotton plant. Oh, seeds fly out already. Okay. So where's the seed of that particular plant? It's over here. If you pass it around, it's very nice. Each seed looks like a heart. Yeah. I have some other seeds, they are dispersed by explosion. So here, these two particular seeds dispersed by explosion. So when they dry and open up, these are the fruits. I don't know where the seeds are. Already dispersed far away. But so what you see here is the fruit. But how I know it's dispersed by explosion is because of this nature. You tend to see them open up like that. I also found small little durian that haven't fully developed. Also same idea in a sense. But this one, animals can feed on it. So dispersed by animals. Yeah. So some other seeds can pass around. Last week I showed you a particular plant that can be dispersed by wind. Yeah. So this over here, this particular fruit, outer case very hard, not quite eat it. But then the seed on the inside can be dispersed by wind. Let me see if I have that seed here. Okay, the seed is in this particular bowl. Okay, you can pass it around, have a look. This is the one where I collect, I tell you the story, I collect plastic bags and stand on top to kill my younger brother. Then. Yeah. Okay, some other seeds I have. Okay, I have a particular seed that I really like that supposedly when it explodes can injure people. So let's hope it doesn't explode. Okay, this is called a dynamite seed. It's called dynamite seed for that very reason, because when it explodes, the seeds will just fly out in all directions. This plant is like a very heavy plant. If you ever go to Fort Canning, you look at a tree with many spikes on it, that's a dynamite tree. You scratch yourself on the spikes, you get very bad inflammations also. I've already coated these seeds with multiple layers of glue, and it has not exploded in the past 4 years that I've had it. So I hope it doesn't explode today. You can give it a shake. And you can hear the seeds inside also. What else do I have? Here, I have my favorite kind of seeds are those that can be dispersed by wind. So this is a particular seed that can be dispersed by wind. Oh. And that's one of my most favorite seeds. If you search for this particular seed, what else do I have? So I have many other seeds that are dispersed by wind also. This one over here, see if anyone can catch it. Oh, it's rather lackluster. I think this one also should be able to. Oh, okay. It doesn't quite have the effect in the classroom, but imagine it in the forest. In the forest, when released from a very high place, it can really fly very far away. What else do I have? I also have amsana seeds. I believe these are dispersed by wind also. Actually, if you look at this, sometimes you cannot quite tell if it's a fruit or a seed. Right? Or a leaf. I would say this is a fruit. You can still see the stem part where it's connected, but if you open up inside, then you'll find the seed. I think it's dispersed by wind. Let me see what else I've got. Yeah, very helpful. Okay, what else? Okay, a lot of other seeds dispersed by wind. Okay, I'm just going to pass down as many seeds as possible. This particular plant over here is called a sky fruit. You can actually find it outside of Hwa Chong. So there was a period of time outside of Hwa Chong, you just see me walking around outside their school. Security guard probably wondering what I'm doing. But I collected this particular fruit called the sky fruit. This is the open up form. There used to be an outer casing, but over time when it opens up in the tree, then all these little segments will come off, and they are actually seeds. I don't know if I can peel off one segment. Yeah? Oh no, I don't have database. So normally what I'll do is after I find something, I will go and research online to find out what it is. Same with all the insects I have. You can see each sheet still attached. But it only attached because I glue them together. What else do I have? I have the Dutchman's pipe, but pre-opening, so this is not yet open. Have you all seen rubber seeds before? Yeah, rubber seeds. So rubber seeds also, they can be found inside a capsule and then they'll explode. I like these seeds also because they look like tigers. The stripes look like tigers. You know what mimosa plant is? Yeah, the touch me not, right? I managed to find their seeds and their fruit. So if you've never seen their seeds and fruit before, of the mimosa plant, oh, I have like so many seeds. This particular plant over here, yeah, I forgot what it's called. When I look at all the openings over here, there used to be seeds inside. I was very lucky, I was in Australia. This particular plant, right, only opens up when there's like a forest fire. So when there's a forest fire, right, then in a very hot season, then the plant will open up, the fruit will open up, and all the seeds will fly out. Yeah, they're very strict laws, you cannot bring things in. But I realized it's okay to bring things out. What else? You know when you look at corn, each kernel is a seed. Yeah? Here is all sorts of different colors of corn that you can possibly find. Blue pea flower that we dissected, I managed to harvest some of the seeds. Basically, I'm preparing for apocalypse. So in the event that something happens, right, I'll plant all these seeds in my garden, right, to restore the biodiversity of Singapore. Let me just pass this entire tray down. Oh yeah, okay, oh shucks, I need to go for a toilet. Okay, I'll be right back. In the meantime, feel free to pass the box around or come in front and just grab anything you want to see inside. I have some other random stuff inside, like salt from the Dead Sea, and then some insect casings. Okay, I'll be right back in a few minutes. Bye. Okay, bye-bye.
Oh,